Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Catholic Re.Con Testimonies from Reverts and Converts. I'm your host, Eddie Trask. This week's guest is Jerry Mariscal, who I'm not even going to give that much of an intro. I got to admit, what you sent me, Jerry, the short little bit that you sent me, I thought, okay, this is a roller coaster.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let you take it, let the Holy Spirit take it. But can you take us to the beginning of your journey, which I'm assuming is in childhood?
Well, it's a deep journey. So started off, man. I come from a Catholic family. They're really my mom and dad are like cradle Catholics. They're born into the Catholic religion, but they don't attend mass. They're not, they don't understand the Catholic religion. I was baptized into Catholic, and my grandfather, who rest in peace, he was a real devoted Catholic. Him and my grandma, which that's where I got the faith from my grandma and my grandpa. So originally I was born in California, Delano, Central Valley.
Yep.
Yeah, man, I'm from the
I,
Valley.
I know it well. Yep.
Yeah. It's called Delano. Not everybody knows Delano, but I guess the closest city is Bakersfield. So yeah, it's Central California. I was born there in California. To my father and mother, I was born there. My parents are from Mexico. They migrated from Mexico and they came here seeking a better life. My mom and dad, they met here. They met in California. And it was a nice childhood. My mom and dad, we had a beautiful family. It was me, my sister, and my dad. Well, you know how it's just unfortunately, the things happen in life. When I was 7 years old, my parents split up. It was a pretty nasty divorce. I took it very hard because we were a good family. I was really close to my dad. Well, when my parents got split up, my dad took it very hard. He got into really bad into drinking. I guess it was too much for him. He moved to Texas and he left us. He left my mom and my sister. That's when everything started, everything started, my whole like pretty much all the bad started happening. I started questioning my faith because I would ask God. I said, well, if you're a loving God, why would you take away, and why would you separate this family? To me, every family was everything. And that's when I started having that relationship with the Lord was kind of was broken. I remember one time I was in I was 7 years old, and I tried to commit suicide. I remember one time my mom found me in the restroom with the knife, and I had cut I was trying to cut my veins. But that was one experience that I had that for some reason something talked to me. I don't know if it was an angel, but something told me not to do it. I dropped the knife. I was crying. My mom went into the restroom. And she after that she seeked out for me. I remember my neighbors, they were really big Catholics, and we lived down the street from a Catholic church, actually from St. Mary's Catholic Church. I remember I was young at the time, but I remember a priest that came and would pray for me. And I was going through a very like rebellious time. My mom didn't know what to do with me. And the priest came, they prayed for me. And after that, I started, life went on. Yeah, so as I got older, my mom met this guy, and she started dating him, and she brought him home and everything, and the guy seemed nice, and he was really nice to me and my sister. But man, he was an evil person. Once he moved into the house, man, you got to see his true how he really was. And he would abuse my mom, and I was young. I was about 10 years old, man, and I couldn't do anything. So, I was seeing violence at a young age. He was a drug addict. I saw him do drugs at a I mean, and I was a kid at the time. So I was like, man, And my mom was just, I don't know, I guess when you're in love, you're blind. She would always pick his side over me and my sister. He was a good manipulator. Childhood, it was tough. So, I guess when you're young and you want attention, as I started getting older, I started hanging around with the bad crowd. I got involved in gangs, and I guess that's where I found comfort. Like, I guess I had to grow up fast. So I got involved. I got involved with gang members. I was 14 years old when I got involved in a gang. And that's when I got introduced, to the drug game, because I was already around it. It was already at my home. Then with these guys, with these, they're gang members. There's drugs. I got involved in that, and I started selling drugs in the streets. And I guess I was good at it. And then I started moving up, and I was making a name for myself in the streets. I was, little did I know, I got involved with, some people that were high profile where I'm from. And that went on for a long time. It got to the point to where I was so deep in the gang life and that lifestyle, that one time, one day, when because I had already left the house when I was 15. I was pretty much not staying at home. I was staying at friends' houses. I was always trying to stay away from home. And one day I got a call. I got a call from my mom, and from my sister, crying. And at those times, this was back in the early 2004. I think I didn't even the cell phones were barely coming out. But I got a call, and my sister was crying. She was like, "Hey, you know what? My mom's boyfriend, his name was Miguel. He's like, hey, Miguel, man, he's lost it. He's spun out on drugs. He has me and my mom at gunpoint. She got away, and she's like, can you come over here? We're scared." So, at that time, I was already, I already, had a lot of people. I took the people that I was with. I remember showing up to the house, and I don't know, but it was the grace of God. But when you're mad and you're angry, a lot of thoughts were going through my head, where I was like, man, should I kill this person? But I've never been a bad person by heart, but something told me not to do it. My friends were telling me when we walked in, and I seen them. I had my mom at gunpoint, and I was like, well, a lot things are going by, like, emotions go fast, and I'm glad that I didn't shoot him. My friends were telling me, shoot this guy, shoot him, and I did. I just, I truly believe God he helped me and guided me not to do it. But I told him, and I said, hey, man, and I remember hitting him with the gun. I said, man, this is the last time I see you in this house. If you ever come back, you ain't gonna live the next time. So he left, and then he never came around when I was there. That was one of the situations that I got into. And then fast forward to like, I want to say a year or two later, when you're doing wrong, things are gonna catch up to you. Back, it was 2005. The people I was hanging around with, the DEA was investigating them because they were running a big criminal scheme, a big drug scheme, and we got raided by the feds, by the DEA, and it was a 2-year investigation. At the time, I was 17 years old, so I was still a minor. So a lot of my friends, 16 of my friends, got indicted that day. And I remember we were at one of my friend's house, and there was helicopters showed up. It was like 6 in the morning. We were out drinking, partying all night. The helicopter showed up. All the street was blocked off, and they raided us. And I remember seeing him. My friend Danny, he got locked up. They took him, his mom, and all of us that were there in the house. They had us handcuffed in front of the house, and all the neighbors come out. It was embarrassing. I was like, man, this is sad. Like, this is the life I'm living. Like, and I remember one of the DA just telling me, he's like, you know what? they were trying to scare me to see if, if I let you talk, but I wasn't going to talk. But I remember before they let me go, they said, look, you guys are young, because it was just me and my best friend, which was my friend Danny, the one that got arrested, that got indicted. It was his older brother that went to prison. And he told us, he said, look, we already got you the older ones. You guys are young. The next time we come around and you guys still haven't changed your ways, you guys are getting locked up. So that was like, okay. I was like, I caught a break. I said, you okay, that was an opportunity. So well, after that happened, I was paranoid. I was like, man, what can I do? I'd already dropped out of high school. I didn't really have anything going for me. I was like, and I hadn't talked to my dad in a long time. My relationship with my dad wasn't the best. I remember reaching out to my dad and I said, look, I said, I can't live here. I gotta leave California. And my dad already had moved to Texas. He was living in Texas. So I said, hey dad, you know what? Is it all right, if I come stay with you? And he said, yeah. So then I moved to Texas. But one thing I learned in life is that you can never run away from your problems, because when you run away from your problems, they're going to catch up to you. So then I moved to Texas. Well, guess what? I wasn't ready to change my ways. I went back to the same thing. I found like the wrong people. I found some people here, and I got into the drug business over here. I remember one of my cousins, he introduced me to somebody in Texas. I was doing a drug transaction, and what happened was that they went bad. They stole my money, the one I was going to give them, and they took the drugs. And pretty much, these people that fronted me the drugs were going to kill me. So there I go. I had to leave the state and I had to go back to California. So I was like, man. So then I came back to California, and then I let that, I let it. I went back in California. I wasn't doing any better when I went back to California. So like, you know what? I'm gonna go back to Texas. I called my dad. I went back to Texas, and then again, this was in 2006. I went to a Halloween party, and I got shot 2 times. Being with the wrong people. This was just I was around the wrong. I was with different gang members, and it's a dumb life. I got shot 2 times. They rushed me to the hospital. I remember this. It was when they were driving me to the hospital, I was falling asleep. I was going into this deep sleep, and when I got to the hospital, I remember like I was already like falling asleep, but I remember everything that was running through my mind and my thoughts was this feeling of just sadness. And I remember I thought about all the bad things I did in my life, and I was like, man, I was like, and that's it. I'm not ready to die. And I was like, God, if you give me another chance, if you just let me redeem myself, I will change my ways. And I was fortunate because the doctors had already pronounced me dead. They told my dad, they had called me, they got a hold of my dad, and they said, your son ain't gonna make it. But through the grace of God, he let me live. So when I got out of the hospital, that was when I really tried to change my ways. I remember when I left the hospital, I was recovering. I was like a vegetable. I had to learn how to walk again. And, it was a long process to recovery. I remember my aunt told me, hey, you know what? There's a youth group. You should go to it. And I said, okay. So then I went. And this is how beautiful God is, how loving and how good he is. That when I went to that youth group, I met this beautiful girl, which is now my wife. And I met her there, and it was beautiful. I was like, and when I went to that youth group, it was nice. I needed that. But then it's like the spiritual warfare. It's like when you're trying to do good, the evil's always trying to pull you back, draw you back to your old ways. So then when I was trying to change again, I was doing better. I was doing good. I remember I got a job. I got a job in the oil fields. and I was doing, doing good with my life. I got my CDI. Went to work in the oil fields. I was making good money, and I married my wife. But I went back. I started slowly going back to my old ways. I started to drink again, and I started to do drugs again because I had stopped, and then I went back to it. So then, I would always try to say, "Well, I'm doing good," but nah, I would always fall back, and I always go back to my old ways. And it was just like a roller coaster. I I fast forward to now. Now that I have my, now that I'm right now, I haven't drank, so I'm good. I'm sober. I've been sober, and I don't want to say that I don't. When I you put a day, oh, it's been so many days since I started. I don't put a date because I'm not going back to it. I'm not even keeping track of, you know, because I'm done. I've already surrendered all, like every addiction, everything. I've already surrendered it, right? So I don't drink anymore. And but
What
going back to
what year did that all happen? When did you like finally give up all of that?
so I've been sober drinking for 2 years now. I
Okay.
haven't drank a beer and I haven't done drugs at all. The drugs I had 3 years ago I had a slip up, but I'll never do it again.
Yep.
And so, but when I was, before I even stopped drinking, before I did all that, I was I had went back to the church. I had went, but I was still at this time, I still hadn't been confirmed. I had only done my first communion. I wasn't married by church. I was married by the simple. And and this is how beautiful and loving God is, that even though I was trying my best, I was trying to do better, but I still hadn't surrendered myself to the Lord yet. Even though I was a Catholic, I was always looking for, like, I don't know if it was I was too scared to surrender myself completely to the truth, to the Lord. But I started going to different Christian churches, Protestant churches where there's singing and rock bands and a pastor, but I never found fulfillment there. And I was like, oh, it's nice and everything. But I was going through that whole journey. So then when I was going through the whole journey of changing and doing right, I got into business because I had used my skills, which my skills were before. I was hustling, I was good at, I was just a hard worker, but it was in a different bad way, right? So I got into when I left the oil fields because it was tough. I had a lot of problems because I was always gone with my wife, because I would be gone for sometimes 2 to 4 weeks at a time. I wouldn't come home. My kids were growing up without me. So my wife told me, like, look, you gotta find something else you gotta do, because I'm not gonna stay with you because I don't trust you. First of all, you're always out, because I would always go to bars. That life, I still, like I said, I was still trying to change and become better. But when I was out working, I would go out with the guys and I would go to bars and, mess around. And so my wife told me, see, like, if we're gonna make this relationship work, you gotta find something else that you gotta do. Well, I was like, well, I mean, I'm a high school dropout. I mean, I don't really have any, I mean, I don't know what to do. And I fell into real estate. I don't know how I fell into it, but went and got my real estate license, got into it. Then I started getting into the investment. I started buying properties and building a small portfolio. And well, I got really good at that, and I started doing really good at that. But the thing is, when business, I've learned now, in the right business too, just like like the bad business, there's a lot of temptations. Because now it's different. There's a lot of networking. I would go out, hang out, and I'll, socialize with a lot of people. And when you're doing good, there's always temptation. There's always, going out to like networking events. There's always women, right? And I was weak, to be honest with you. Like I said, I was always battling to do right and good, but I would always fall. So this is my how my true conversion started. when I really surrendered myself, and I'm going through it now. 2 years ago, going on 2 years ago, my uncle invited me to a retreat in Lubbock. It was called the Flame of Mercy with Brother Howard in Lubbock. So I went for 3 days, and it was called the Macho Man Retreat. And I'm one of those macho man, like, I'm tough, and like that's the person I was. So I went to this retreat, and it was awesome because there was a lot of people just like me that were broken, that were going through a lot of, even though I would say that I forgave a lot of people, my mom and my dad, really I didn't. Really, I had a lot of hate inside. But on the outside, I would act like I was good, right? But I wasn't. So I went to this retreat, and within this retreat, the Holy Spirit was there because I broke down and I let it all out. I really just, it wasn't just me, it was a bunch of other men that were just like me. We were crying, bawling, and just, it was something that it was powerful. So then when I left that retreat, I wasn't the same person anymore. I was like, okay, I started to I started to surrender myself. I started to become humble because I was never humble, because I was always trying to be in control. I was tough. I was like, I wanted to be the boss. I wanted to be in charge. And to be humble was very hard for me. So then when I came back and I started to realize, and I said, wow, this business it isn't for me, because if I want to complete surrender myself and I want to give up everything, and I want to heal myself internally, then I have to be humble and I have to give up everything. So right now I've pretty much been giving up. I gave up most of my business. I dropped my entities. I went back to work as a humble man. I'm working as a maintenance technician at an apartment complex, and I went from having workers now to working for somebody. And now I'm just, I put everything in the Lord's hand, and I say, God, Father, you guide me. Whatever you want, what you give me is going to be fruitful, because it's not from me, it's from you, what you give me. And now I'm just how I'm living my life, living, disconnecting. I got rid of all my social media, everything that I had, all like I'm just trying to stay disconnected as much as possible from the world, because the more I'm disconnected and more connected with the Lord, it keeps me grounded, and it keeps me humble, and it keeps me, and it keeps me in that sanctifying grace. Because when I'm living in the world, man, it's so much distraction. Like, being able to stop drinking and give up drugs, it's not our will. It's the Father's will. The Father's will, if you surrender yourself to Him, and you just say, you know what, Father, I'm a weak person, humbly, because the most hardest thing to do is to get on your knees and cry like a little boy and say, Father, I'm weak. I need you, because I realize that our true father and our true mother it's Jesus Christ, it's God. It's our mother is the Virgin Mary. I lack my parents, but I found it in them that they're my parents and they're my guidance. So it's like, and now that the more I read, I'm really big on theology now. I've been like I'm reading this book, the Imitation of Christ, that's what's actually guiding me to be humble, to give up everything, and to serve the Lord. But the way and I know the way to heal my parents, to heal myself, is to help them, to heal them, to find their salvation. And I'm gonna emphasize the Eucharist, because when I went into the new covenant, I went and I went into, like, to be like fulfill all my sacraments. I just got confirmed this last Easter. I got married to the church this last Easter. My kids did their first communion. We all take communion. For this whole year has been the most beautiful year, because we go to Mass Sunday faithfully every Sunday. If I can go on a weekday, I will go. But for sure, me and my family, we go and we take the Eucharist on Sundays, because that's the bread of life, and that's what purifies us, and that's what strengthens us. And this is my testimony. Since I've taken the Eucharist with my kids and my wife, we have been we have just been so connected. We have been like, it's just like we have that cover, we're in that cover, we have that protection. And I advise every person that is going through any suffering, because and I really think now that I read the Bible, and I read, and I've been reading the catechism, the more I understand the revelations that God has given me, is that my sufferings, what I've been through, is nothing compared to the sorrows and suffering that the Lord has went through for us. Like, he uses us because our sufferings, and this is how I see it now. Our sufferings in this world, it's only temporary. It's only temporary. We're not going to suffer forever, because I'm so into like reading about saints, listening to saint stories. Every saint that I've listened to has suffered. So I don't feel bad anymore. I'm like, wow, I suffered, but you know what? So all these saints, Padre Pio, a lot of saints have suffered. So I'm like, that's good. I just have to embrace and another thing, I pray the rosary. I try to pray every day faithfully, but I'm gonna be honest, there's days where I don't do it. But when I pray the rosary, oh my God, there's days where there's some prayers where I'm happy. There's some prayers where are sorrowful. Some prayers are painful or deep. But that's where I find my healing and my connection. This is why I say, I know as long as I stay with the Lord, and I stay humble, that anybody can overcome any addiction, any depression, any suffering, if you just imitate Christ, and you follow him, and you completely surrender yourself to him. You find them in the Eucharist. I recommend every person that is suffering to find them in the Eucharist. And I'll emphasize this, and I truly believe this, because Jesus said this, that he told us all, the only way to the Father is through the Son. And because the only way we're gonna get to the kingdom of heaven is through him. And he tells us, when he told the disciples in the Last Supper, when he broke bread with them, that we have to eat of his bread and his blood and his flesh. And that's the Eucharist. And that's important. And I have to say that, brother, because no doctor, the doctor, our healer is Christ. The church is the hospital, but the church, we need Christ, because we need our real healer, and our real healing, it's going to be through him, and it's going to be through the Eucharist. So anybody that's going through depression, yes, you can seek counseling, you can seek, but where you're going to find the true healing is through him.
Amen.
And I just wanted to say that, brother.
Oh, have you shared this with anyone else that you've been?
Oh, this is my first podcast I'm on, that I'm sharing it with you.
Okay.
And glory to God that you allowed me to share this with everybody.
Absolutely. You are, and your family is a real blessing. And I can tell that I'm sure you're going to share this story with many people. The fire that you have, the fire that the Holy Spirit has put within you is something remarkable. But I want to get to a few questions for
Yes.
sure. Because I was I was captivated by what you were saying. So I just want to thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Going through, I guess, the last, you've been sober 2 years, let's say.
Yeah.
And you disconnected from the world. And you were saying how the family is receiving the Eucharist, getting closer, closer, closer. For those that are in families where it does not feel close, what advice would you give to those people right now, whether they have a past or not, but if their family's just disconnected?
Well, let me tell you something. It all starts with the head of the household. In the Bible, it says, the man, we're the head of the household, right? And then I've read, and I started reading from the Old Testament. I'm going into the New Testament, but you can't force people to change. You can't say, like my wife and with my kids, it's a process, it's approach, it's humility. God, when he walked this earth, he wasn't just discipling and saying, you have to follow me. his teachings was with through his approach, the love approach, and compassion for others, right? So it's like with my wife. My wife, when I went through this whole journey, it wasn't like, oh yeah, let's get married by church. No, our marriage was broken. We were almost divorced. The only reason that we reconciliated our marriage was because I went into the covenant, into that covenant with the Lord, into the full sacraments. But it wasn't like, hey, let's just go to the no. I had to show her with actions. It's like faith. It's like they say faith with works, right? It's like, you can't just say have faith and just like I tell my wife, well, I have faith in God. No, it's with works. With works. I had to show her when I stopped drinking. And this is how I really, like, she really knew that the Holy Spirit was in me and that I was truly converted. I was praying the rosary every day. I went like a couple months where I prayed it faithfully every day. And when I was going into the meditating, believe me, I'm not a person that cries. I'm far from that. My kids had never saw me cry until I prayed the rosary. And that right there humbled my wife, humbled my kids, because they were like, my dad's crying. And I was bawling, like and I couldn't control it. So then that conversion, because of that, because it's powerful, my wife, they were drawn to it. So then that's when I said, we need to start RCIA classes. We went and we did the whole RCIA. We took the kids. It was a process. And let me tell you, because I knew the truth and because I knew that I believed in the Eucharist, that whole process, the whole year to getting confirmed, I really wanted to take it, but I couldn't. It was a process, and I yearned for it every day. When I was sitting mass, I was like, and I watch everybody take the body of Christ, and I was like, but I was patient. This is where God teaches you to be humble and to be patient, and it's the humility, right? But I knew it, and I was there, and I was patient. But I knew that if I were to do the works, and I was patient, and I waited for it, that there was going to be good things that were going to come from it. And right now, I mean, I'm blessed. Like, people might say, like, what are you doing? You left your business, you left everything. Like, a lot of relationships and business, I let them go, because to really truly be connected with him is I have to let go of a lot of things, because a lot of the people that I've associated with in business they didn't believe in Christ.
Yeah.
They were, and not to judge them, and I hope they come around, because, I truly love everyone that I've come, that I have a relationship in the past. I truly want them to be saved. But I'm not the type that's going to say, you better be a Catholic or you better convert. No, because everybody's journey, everybody's conversion is different, right? And I know that if I plant seeds and it's by works, people see me and they truly see and they say, okay, he's changed. The way God has taught me is because, and you know what's funny is that my dad is going to mass more. My dad is I'm almost convincing him to take the Eucharist. I want him to go back to the Eucharist. I want him to get an atonement, because he's been separated.
Sure.
And then go back and, go to confession. And I want him to take the Eucharist. My dad stopped drinking because he saw me, because I stopped drinking. Me and my dad were drinking buddies for a long time. Me and my dad's relationship, when I stopped drinking, we didn't talk as much. It was different. We didn't communicate the same, because our relationship was based, I was just drinking. That's how we bonded. But then it's beautiful how God works. I stopped drinking. Yeah, I didn't talk to him the same. Conversations were different. But then my dad, I planted a seed with my dad. My dad said, and then I remember my grandma, his mom told him, how is it that your son stopped drinking and you haven't? And you're the dad, you're supposed to set the example. So that's when he said, I have to stop. And he stopped for months, went back to drinking again. But I truly believe he's going to stop drinking completely, because he's not drinking the same. And because I'm showing him that you can live righteously. So that's how you convert people. That's how you show them, through humility, through love. I do a lot of discipling in the streets. I go and I see homeless. I connect a lot with drug addicts. I feel their pain. I feel their compassion. I'll be I live in Fort Worth. So I go to Stop Six. I go like in the hood, and I go and I pray for people. And it's just random. Like I'll just, hey, I see somebody, hey, can I pray for you? And I hug them and I embrace them and I love them. And then guess what? I know that seed's planted. And that's what I'm doing. And nobody knows about it. Nobody needs to know about it. But that's how, to me, how God is showing me that how I'm gonna reach his sheep that have gone astray. Because he's using me. I've been through the suffering. I embrace his sufferings. I'm not like, oh God, why me? No, God, thank you. Because I know that, because you know that I'm strong and I can overcome everything through you. You use me so I can go out and I can disciple for you. And now I'm just like, everything I'm doing now, it's just about him. And I don't know where this is gonna lead me. And I'm fixing to start youth ministry, which never in my mind that I think I was gonna be doing youth ministry.
Wherever it
But
takes
hey,
you, though, that's what you were saying
yeah.
about the Lord's will. What comes to my mind is Saint John Vianney, when he was talking about if you embrace your cross, you realize you're not. It's not you carrying it; the cross is carrying you, which is just a fantastic. When you started talking the way
Yeah.
you're talking, I'm like, that's what it's all about. That's unbelievable. I also wanted to ask you about. You mentioned, I think, that you were kind
Mhm.
of attracted to the gang life. You said something about
Yeah.
comfort. Do you think that was just a standard with all your buddies, like looking to fill just a massive void in the family, or what was the common factor there?
Well, you know what? A lot of my friends are either dead or in prison. That's the truth. And it's I'm not gonna lie, like a lot of these friends that I have, there's friends that I wish I never had. I wish, I would have never, crossed paths with them. Okay, in a way, I'm like, I can't judge them. But there's a lot of people just like me that they were good people. They're broken. Like one of my good friends, his name's George. We call him Koki. He passed away 5 years ago, drug overdose, and sweetest guy. You look at the guy; he's a big mean bully, right? But inside, he's a nice. He's a big teddy bear, you know. And I know his life. I know him personally. He's broken. He comes from a broken family. A lot of them, and I'll be honest, a lot of these gangsters, they put on a persona. I did it. Like inside, we're good people. We're nice, but we have to show like we're just mean, because that's how we can't show weakness, right? And I believe, and I think a lot of people in general, like, we have to show like we're tough,
Yep.
right? Like you have to, either you get bullied or you are the bully. You know what I mean? And that's how it is. And now I'm learning now that, because I've become soft. Like now I play sports too now. Like I love soccer. I play soccer, and when I'm on the pitch, I'm on the field. You know, I used to be a bully. Now I'm like, if somebody runs into me and hits me, I'm like, sorry, I let it go, right? Or somebody in like at a store, somebody, cuts me off or something. I'm driving. I used to like get mad, and now I'm just like, all right, it's all right, it's I'm humble. I don't have to show that person anymore. I pretty much let that identity go.
Yep.
And it's unfortunate. I see a lot of these, like, I got family members that are young going through it. And I tell them, I'm like, it's not worth it. Like, what are you trying to do? Like, who are you trying to impress? Because, like, and it's crazy because there's a lot of good kids that they come from good families and they're still trying to get in this life. Me, I had, the reason I got it, I didn't want to be home. I didn't want to be at the house. Like, yeah, I was in a really bad environment. Like, to me, I had to find comfort somewhere else, protection somewhere else, because I use these people actually for protection, you know? And at the end of the day, I mean, if you're finding you I'll pretty much summarize like this. You ain't gonna find any protection nowhere but with the Lord.
Yes.
Nowhere. Nowhere you ain't gonna find that protection. You will never fulfill that void nowhere. The devil, he's the biggest manipulator. That's what he's good at. He has no power. He manipulates you to believe and to think. It's like the pleasures, like lusting and drinking and partying and the pleasures of the nightlife and all that. It's all false. Because the next day you wake up and you go back to the reality, you're hungover. You got problems, you don't wasted too much money. Your wife's mad because you didn't come home. It's false. It's the same thing. It's all false. You're never gonna find that fulfillment nowhere but with the Lord. Nowhere.
Yeah.
You can go try to find it. You can try to find it through yoga, through the gym, through all that. I used to go to the gym. I used to be big on all that. I used to be very disciplined, and I'll read books, saw mental toughness and all that. And yeah, it works and all that, but you're never fulfilled. It's
Yep.
never enough. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And then my true fulfillment, where I found fulfillment, it's in the simple things. It's with the Lord. Go to mass. I love going to mass. Sundays, I go in there and I'm just I feel good. I feel nourished and refreshed. And I never found that nowhere else. Not in no club, not in no gangs, not in nothing. All that was just temporary fulfillment, temporary pleasures. The
Yep.
drugs, I did a lot of cocaine. It was never enough. It was like you get high and you're chasing a high that you're never gonna feel again. And it was just a cycle. And then you feel good and you're hanging out with people and they're drugged up with you and you're talking about it, and they're your BFFs, and then the next day they're gone.
Yep.
It's false. And I tell all these new generations, I'm like, quit trying to find quit, I don't know, just quit trying to find fulfillment in the wrong places. But I guess in a way it's like everybody has to live in, a lot of people have to make mistakes.
That's what I was
Because I
gonna
know
ask. That's what I was gonna ask you
yeah,
about. I'm like, man, I wish that when you would talk to family members or anyone that you meet, if they would just something would click each time. But
nah,
that's not the case, because you're not the first to be telling their family, "Won't you please listen? Don't go down this path."
yeah, I'll
Oh
go
my
down.
gosh. Well, the other thing is, you said it was the fear of surrender. So there's no surrender when you think of going the other route, the temporary pleasures. That's easy. I mean, that's as
Yeah,
easy as it gets, right? And so when
yeah,
you say I'm just chasing this height, that's easy. But when you finally figure out, well, what's true fulfillment, it's going to take humility, like you said. It's going to take complete
yeah.
surrender to let go of all those ridiculous phantoms that exist. So, um, okay, maybe one more question.
Yeah.
Um, I want you to speak to the role you talked about, head of household, the role of a father with young boys or girls, and how to, I guess, witness to the beauty of the faith. What's the most important part there in witnessing to the beauty?
Well, the most important thing is, I mean, I'll speak just for me with how I lead my children
Yeah.
is, you know, I before I used to try to like push them, like to do like, because my kids play soccer and they're really, really like, big in soccer. And I used to always be that type of parent that was like, because I didn't want them to go that route and do bad, I always pushed them and I always asked a lot from them. It was never enough.
Sure.
I used to be like, oh yeah, it's never good enough. My wife would tell me, it's never good enough for you. Because I was in my mind, I was like, I don't want them to go that path I went through. I didn't want them to do bad. So I always wanted them to do their best. But now that we go to mass and I'm humble now, I try to teach my children is like, okay, you know what? You know, like I try to teach them humility as well. It's like not force things on them either. Because I used to be that parent that used to like, oh, you gotta, I'm gonna force things. You know, no. You know what? You just pray, just surrender yourself, ask the Lord to always guide you, and whatever you want to do, you do it. My oldest, he loves to please me. My oldest cares so much about what I say. And my wife taught me that. So I have to be very careful, how what I tell him, because he what I tell him affects him a lot. So now I tell my oldest one, I'm like, now he wants to do football. I said, son, and I love soccer and I want him to do soccer, but now I'm like, go ahead, son, do what you want. And now which and one of the catechist teachers even said, she's like, I feel like one of your kids is gonna be a priest. So I was like, wow, I was like, that was like the best news I heard. Like I was like, okay, I hope that he does, give himself to the Lord. And then another thing, I don't know if I didn't mention it. I really feel when I'm in mass, I feel like the Lord is asking me to become a deacon. I see myself when the priest and the deacon are giving the service. I see myself giving the service. I've been having those visions. So I'm like, well, I don't know if that's what you want from me, then I hope that your will be done, not my will. So I try to tell my kids the same thing. To always let the Lord's will, to that his will be it will be his will before your will. Like with my kids with soccer, I was like, if you go pro, you go pro. If you don't, it's okay.
Yeah.
If God calls you to serve him, I'd rather you serve the Lord, not to serve me, not to serve your mom, but to serve the Lord. And I always tell them, now I tell them, put God first, you know, and that's one advice I give to all the families is to always put the Lord first. And I know that it's very difficult for a lot of families. And I had and it was funny because I went to a dinner a couple of days ago. It was a couple 2 days ago with my sister-in-law's birthday party, and I love talking about the Lord now. Now that I'm like reading and understanding everything more, and I love to teach and I love to like speak about the Lord. Not everybody wants to hear it. Not everybody wants to hear it. Some people, and it's crazy because they're Catholic. So my wife's family is Catholic, and I talk about it, and they don't want to hear it. They just, I don't want to be that person that's always like, "Hey, you got to listen to." No, you know.
Well, I gotta encourage you because it's funny. That's what I was gonna end with is to say, don't ever stop talking. Obviously, I should say, don't ever lose the zeal. I think we all learn when to say things, when not to say things. But as far as that fire, don't don't ever stop
Don't
sharing your
stop. Yeah.
story. Don't ever stop sharing your story. That's what I'd say. And, I think um I connected with that on a number of levels. And it's pretty cool that we're both from the Central Valley. So that's always good.
Oh,
So
nice. Well, what part of Central Valley are you from?
I'm from Kerman, right outside of
Oh, you're
Fresno.
from Kermit. Yeah, outside of Fresno. My sister lives in Fresno.
Is that right? Yep.
Yeah, she lives
So,
in Fresno. She graduated from Fresno State.
okay, me too. Me
Oh,
too.
nice. You're a bulldog.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. So anyway, the what you were saying, yeah, resonated on many levels, and um, you're a blessing to the church for sure.
Thank you.
And um, God be with your wife and you and the kids and everyone in your family, your dad, your mom, everyone, right?
Thank you.
I encourage everyone to pray when we hear stories of redemption like this, not to, and I know you're not this, but this is an encouragement from one layman to another. Don't ever rest on anything to say you've arrived in any way. God has given you everything, and He will sustain you as long as you continue to humble yourself. And as I say, pretty much every time. The advice that if I ever give advice, it's also for myself. So, but I see that in you, and the church needs a lot of that. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jerry. Really
You're
appreciate it.
welcome. Thank you
Okay.
for having me.
Yeah, trust me, it's my pleasure. And everyone, as usual, please share this video, and please like and subscribe and everything else. And until next time, take care and God bless.